All we're asking is give peace a chance, was the mantra chanted by 60s protesters seeking an end to the Vietnam War. From college campuses to cities to Washington, D.C., youth throughout the country pushed for the realization of this mantra. These hippies followed their moral compasses from east to west and back again, hoping to fix the immoral places of the U.S.
Throughout the 60s, a counterculture formed that we remember to this day as hippies, though they were known by many other names, including flower children or even communists. The 60s were a time of many changes. The people of the 60s clung to the tension found in the Cold War. However, Americans were able to break free of the outrageous social conformity and extreme paranoia of the 50s. America found battles both at home and abroad. The civil rights movement peaked in the 60s, and the Vietnam War was to be the newest excursion to eradicate communism. Freedom Summer, a summer of sit-ins, freedom rides, and other pleas for civil rights, was the key to an acquisition of black civil rights, and brought many people together under the name of freedom fighters. Similarly, Americans were able to unite under their hatred of the unjust Vietnam War. Americans disagreed with the draft, tactics, and even the participation in the Vietnam War, where simple people were forced to fight and die for a cause that was not their own. Forced to slaughter many innocent Vietnamese villagers and pillage the towns in the north. After the war, soldiers were left with intense mental problems such as PTSD when they returned. Throughout this decade, most Americans retained their pious mentality and believed in abstinence from both sex and drugs. However, many returning soldiers accompanied the rebellious hippie culture in the experimentation with drugs.
When the 60s came around, counterculturists became more comfortable with using drugs. Hippies employed music as well as drugs in order to tune in to their inner vision, as well as to religion. Hippies jammed to rock music, but instead of jazz like the previous counterculture, they chose to listen to folk music. The well-remembered Woodstock Festival brought many hippies together to search their souls with the aid of music, drugs, mostly marijuana and LSD, and free love. While searching for inner peace and love, hippies tried their best to oppose mainstream culture. As the famous Beats writer Jack Kerouac said, "The hippie movement is the same movement as the Beats." The Beats were a big counterculture of the 50s and contributed to the development of hippie culture.
Hippies evolved the use of drugs into a way to search the soul. They would go on psychedelic adventures aboard a bus called Further and turn into their inner vision. Ken Kesey, the owner of the bus Further, led them on these adventures.
And this was the first part of what we call the trip. The trip was happening before the drugs. It would be where somebody would take your mind and head down a road with it, kind of gentle and slow, and then pretty soon getting faster and faster, and take your mind along with them in places that ordinarily it wouldn't have gone.
The escapes the Beats had employed turned into a way for hippies to assert themselves to America and the world. They forced people to notice their concern for the environment and pushed for Earth Day in 1970.
We've planted our seeds. We ask that our efforts be worthy to produce simple food for our simple taste.
Through their free lifestyle, characterized by sex, drugs, and free love, hippies created the world they saw through their inner vision. They invented a world more lax about sex, with worry for the earth, and with less formality around our common man. Hippies shattered the social norms that had controlled Americans in both the 50s and the early 60s.
The Cold War kept the threat of mutually assured destruction over the heads of hippies and beatniks alike. However, while the Beats tried their best to distract themselves from their imminent yet far-off demise, the hippies chose to stand and fight their possible impending doom. They pressed Americans to realize the immorality of war, not only with the Cold War, but also with the wars that stemmed from the government's persisting fear of communism. The American public heard the hippies' pleas through anti-war protests, on-campus rallies, and concerts for peace. They pleaded for the end of war, all war. However, they especially criminalized the Vietnam War.
Hippies also struggled against immoralities within the United States. They gathered together and spread their vision of equality and civil rights in a similar manner as when they fought the Vietnam War. Many Americans supported the flower child ways of the hippies and chose to follow them, though sometimes without the generic aesthetics of hippies.
As the decade faded into the 60s, the new youth realized they needed to actually do something in order to enact change. With the dawning of this realization, the hippies were born. They maintained the threat of rebelliousness from their predecessors. However, they also pushed America and the world around them to change for the better. And change the world did. The hippies drove us to relax our society and mentality, though they have not quite reached success in preventing war. Eventually, America will listen to the flower children. Peace will be given a chance.